schedule. I understand that some folks are having a little trouble joining this morning, so we are working on getting that information out to folks as soon as possible, but bear with us. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our workshop on utility customer arrearages during COVID-19, hosted by the California Public Utilities Commission. Before we get started with our packed schedule, I wanted to go over a few brief housekeeping notes. All attendees who are not panelists should be automatically muted and will have video disabled for the duration of this morning's panels. That is, unless you are promoted to a panelist, if you are one of the work teams presenting this morning. On the side of your WebEx screen, you should see a button for participants. And that, Justin, could you advance the slide, please? As demonstrated on the slide, which will allow you to see the participants in today's session, and a button for chat. Please use the chat function for any logistical concerns or technical issues. Next slide, please. I'm going to go to the next slide, actually, as well. If you need technical support or encountering issues with WebEx, please contact my colleague Julie Lane at the below phone number or email, or use the chat function in WebEx to alert her. But note that we will not have Julie this afternoon, so we will have different tech support for that session. This meeting will be recorded and shared on the CPUC's website for this proceeding. And next slide. All right, welcome to day 2. For this morning's presentations, I will call on each team individually. As you can see, we have a very packed agenda. Each work team will have 3 minutes to present their proposals and their unique version of the criteria grid based on their work team results yesterday, which will show how their proposal meets various criteria. After the presentation, we'll turn first to commissioners for any questions for the team, and then our panel of discussants, and finally, if time permits, to questions from other participants. Questions from participants should be submitted via the Q&A function in WebEx, and please try and make sure to send them to everyone so that everyone has a chance to see the questions and we don't miss any. If we have time for questions from the Q&A, I'll turn to Amy at that time, and she will read the questions aloud. Given our tight schedule, we're sure there will be more questions than can be answered, so we do encourage team members to reply to questions themselves if you're willing. Without further ado, I am going to, Justin, could you advance to the next slide, please? We are joined today by Commissioner Guzman Aceves, and we're hoping that we may have other commissioners join as well. And we're also thrilled to be joined by our panel of discussants, 2 of whom are rejoining us from yesterday's panel, Elliot Nethercutt of the National Regulatory Research Institute, and Kim Ricalco from the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. And we're also joined by Charlie Herrick of the National Consumer Law Center this morning, who will ask some questions of our work teams. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenting team of the day, which is Work Team 5, presenting on Proposal Area E, which is small business. Work Team 5, whenever your presenter is ready.
And all you would have to do, presenter, is to hit the share button on your WebEx. And I'm working through the list right now. I apologize. If you need to be presented right now and I haven't gotten to you, just message me and I'll get to that. I guess it'd be easier to ask since I don't see anything happening. Who is the presenter for Team 5?
Hello, this is Ryan Sarai of Cal Advocates. I am the presenter for, oh, excuse me.
Lisa Reese is the presenter for Team 5.
Sorry, could you speak up, Carmelita?
Yes, Elisa Reese is the presenter for Team 5. And she's put a note in the Q&A that says that she cannot unmute.
Okay, I have her. Give me a second. Now she will.
Thank you. Okay. Now, please, I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I cannot share. So is that something you need to do? My share is grayed out.
As a panelist, you should be able to share.
It's grayed out. It won't let me.
It will not. Okay.
My share is grayed out.
Elisa, could you send me your presentation and I will go ahead and share it?
Yes, I will send it right now.
In the interim, I'm going to suggest that we move on to the next team because I know that Ryan Sarai just identified himself as the presenter and seems to be a panelist. So while Team 5 is getting their materials to Justin, I'm going to call on Ryan if that works. Ryan, are you still there?
Yes, my apologies. I'm the next speaker for Work Team 4. I have the materials ready, but I can't share my content. Would I need to send that to Justin?
Hi, everyone. Could you please just send it to me? I do apologize. I thought that panel were able to share, but we will get this started shortly.
Okay, then for clarity, I'm going to take a brief break while this gets worked out, and then we'll call on Team 5 once that is ready.
I just sent it to Justin, so you should be getting it pretty soon.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Commissioner. This Group 5 worked on the small business proposals, and we have 3 proposals here. The first one is what I called a specialized group to work with small business. And the specialized group will have higher touch, more detailed, customized solutions to small businesses. The simplicity of this proposal is high. It will be easy for customers to understand and learn about all the programs and services that are available to them. Possibility of implementation is also high. Okay, something happened. Okay, there it goes. Thank you. And fairness and equity also high. This is our high proposal for all across. The impact on customers' behavior, we also think it will be high. The only one that is a medium is the mitigate cost shifting to non-participant customers. That will be some cost to create such a program that will probably need to find funding for it. And we can leverage existing programs, and it's a longevity with a new criteria that we added to the ones we were given. And we think this is high because it's something that can remain in place for longer than a short period of time. Our next proposal is to create customized payment arrangements for customers, and we would provide the customer some type of arrangement based on the number of bills that they're in arrears. For example, a customer that has 6 months in arrears, they will get 12 months to pay back, a payment plan to pay back the arrears. This will have a cap of 24 months. So any customers with 12 or more months in arrears will receive a 24-month payment arrangement. The criteria were high, simple for the customer to call and say, I need a payment arrangement. The changes to systems make it a medium because right now, Edison is going through SAP implementation, so is San Diego Gas and Electric, and PG&E will need to tweak their system to be able to offer the 24 months. Equity is high, and the impact to customers is also, I'm sorry, I got lost. Equity impact to customers is low and medium because we have studies have shown that customers with long payment arrangements tend to default at a higher rate than shorter payment arrangements, but we will need a study to see how commercial customers react to longer payment arrangements. Leverage is high because we all have the process in place. Longevity is also medium because we will only do this option for a limited time until all customers have recovered from the COVID impacts. And again, the cost, it's potentially low because depends on the default of customers and customers shutting down, leaving arrears behind. Our last proposal is to create a specific rate for small business customers, similar to rates are given to large businesses who are potentially leaving the state or may go out of business, and they get a specific rate. The simplicity is medium because this rate already exists for the large customers. We'll just have to change it to fit small businesses. Implementation is low because it could be difficult. We may need regulatory approvals or perhaps state approvals to implement a new rate. The fairness and equity is medium. Some business may apply for it. They're savvy with all the programs the electric companies offer, but others may not be as savvy or interested in a new rate. The impact on customer behavior is medium and high. It all depends on the customer adoption. Leverage, existing programs and funding is medium. Like I said, that rate already is in place. It's just tweaking it to fit small businesses. Longevity will be low, medium again, because like the payment plans will be for a small period of time. And the cost, the million-dollar question, we have to find funding on how to pay for these programs. And those are the three proposals that our team came up with.
Thank you so much, Elisa. So next, I'm going to turn to our commissioners present if they have any questions, and be sure to unmute yourself before speaking.
I don't have any now. Thank you, Ben.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Guzman-Aceves. Next, I'll turn to our panel of discussants. Discussants, if you have any questions for Team 5.
This is Charlie. I have 2 or 3 maybe, but let me start with this one. One thing that jumped out on me is to offer a program of payments based on the number of months behind actually seemed more complicated than it needs to be. That if one were to track it to anything, it might be how much you owe, on the theory that if you owe more, you might need longer period of time. So I'm wondering why one would tie the length of a payment plan to the number of months behind, which the customer probably wouldn't know and might not be so easy to get even from a customer service because you'd have to dig into records.
The amount that the customers owe may not be equitable to all customers. For example, a small business could have monthly bills of $100 a month, and another small business could have bills of $2,000 a month. So it wouldn't be fair to give them the same time because one has higher bills than the other.
Good point. So actually, I would suggest the model should just be long payment plans in this environment generally, so that we don't have to worry about small businesses have small arrearages, larger have larger, or trying to figure out how many months anybody is behind. So I'll just suggest, for simplicity's sake, it might just be that the long payment plan is available generally.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from discussants?
I really kind of the same as what Charles is. One of the things that we've implemented already at SMUD is just.
I cannot hear.
Yeah, can't hear.
Sorry.
Hi, Kim, could you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. I'm probably not close enough. I don't have my headset on. I apologize. Now, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. I just want to echo what the previous, I think it was Charles said as well. At SMUD, we've actually just customized payment plans as one of our options for SMB. I think the complex, it's not a complex plan which they gave, but when it becomes complex is for CSRs, trying to figure out, okay, which plan do I offer you? So I think the more simple you can provide it to the CSRs who are typically offering those or helping the customer with it, I think the better off you are. We're already estimating that those calls are going to be long, when disconnects start. So the simpler we can make it, just a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Any other questions from discussants before I move to see if we have any questions in the Q&A?
Oh, I have one more. So I don't know anything about the existing, I gather, large customer economic development rate, but I'm wondering, whatever the reason is that small businesses don't get it now, to allow small businesses to get it, would that require a rate case in California?
Possibly.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
And Justin,
go ahead, Amy.
Justin, we do have one question from Elliot Nethercutt. Can you promote him to panelist?
He should be good to go now.
Okay, Elliot, please go ahead and ask the question.
I see him muting and unmuting himself, so there may be.
Okay,
I'm going to
let me
go ahead.
Oh, I can move on to one more question if we have time.
Okay, yeah, why don't you do that?
And this is sort of a comment, but maybe Elisa can respond. This question comes from Leslie Brown. If customers have been making partial payments, it's difficult to determine the number of months in arrears. That could also potentially discourage continuous non-payment to qualify for a longer repayment period. I think that's also in response to the point about number of months in arrears dictating the length of the payment plan. I don't know if there's any feedback on that.
I'm not sure about San Diego Gas and Electric and PG&E, but at Edison, we do have visibility. The reps, the fund reps, have visibility at how many months the customer is owing. PG&E, in San Diego, can you respond?
Whitney, you muted yourself, I think.
Yeah, this is Whitney Peck with PG&E. It would be a change to our system to do that. Currently, right now, it doesn't show how many months customers are in arrears.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next team at this point. Thank you so much, Team 5, for your presentation. At this point, we're going to go to Team 4, which is in Proposal Area D, Leveraging and Matching Existing Activities. I believe Ryan Sarai is the presenter for this group. And Justin, do you have Ryan's group's matrix ready?
I do. I'm just opening that up right now. Group 4, I think you just sent me your work teams, the order of work teams. I actually don't have. It's build at OIR workshop. I should have that. Okay, give me a sec. All right. OIR workshop team 4 proposal. Okay. Just that.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Justin.
Ryan, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks everyone. Good morning. This is Ryan Sarai from Cal Advocates representing work team number 4. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. All right. So we had parties from SoCal Gas, SCE, SDG&E, Greenlining, Cal Advocates, as well as an individual from Golden State Water who either participated or were actively engaged in coming up with proposals for existing activities. I believe a part of the screen is blocked, unfortunately. Okay, thank you. So we have 3 proposals that we would like to discuss. Excuse us if the first proposal reads Proposal 4. We had the first 3 that we were considering that we struck out as we were considering other ones. So the first proposal we have is to request HCD, Cal Housing and Community Development to apportion funds specifically for utility customers. And when we make that proposal, it's less about directly requesting HCD to do so. And as we were talking in our discussion group, we were thinking more perhaps encouraging a stronger marketing push from the IOUs to encourage customers to apply for these HCD funds that are primarily reserved for rent relief, but also have a secondary purpose of providing arrearage and utility bill service relief as well. As far as some of the particularly effective criteria that are addressed by this, we think this is a highly additive program rather than something that's redundant. But we do see some issues in ease of implementation and ease of access and participation if we're trying to simply just encourage customers to apply for these funds through a marketing push. Our next proposal is to encourage utilities to partner with CBOs to help reach hardest to reach customers. Now, we see particularly effective criteria being addressed here in fairness and especially in equity and impact on targeted customers. I think specifically the description for equity stands out where CBOs are they work closer to customers who are truly in need and can better identify specific customers who need it the most. I do think there's this key aspect where we would need to determine how to advise the CBOs in this regard for the arrears proceeding. And Justin, if you would mind scrolling down to Proposal 6, just between the 2 pages. That's perfect, thank you. The next proposal, which SCE brought up, was providing LIHEAP marketing materials to give customers a platform to access LIHEAP funds that can be used for arrearages. We see a medium to high potential in meeting the criteria of being, easy to implement, but we would need some more information on the fairness of a program like this and some more information in general on how the LIHEAP marketing materials would work and what, kind of customers we're trying to reach out to with these materials, specifically customers in arrears or customers who are struggling to pay their bills, what types of arrears, and so on. And then finally, I would just like to add that these proposals were sort of developed from two key perspectives, being that, we want to focus on existing programs since the timeline for this proceeding is so short and arrearage debt is really a problem as we're transitioning out of the disconnection moratorium. But we had some parties explain in our workshop call that these don't reflect the end-all solutions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Before I move to our Q&A real quick, I just wanted to ask Team 8 to be sure to send your proposal criteria grid to Justin so that he can have it up during your presentation. Now I'm going to turn to Q&A from the commissioners first.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Ryan, for that presentation. I guess one question, maybe more of a statement, but also any thoughts on this. I think it's particularly of interest to focus on how we optimize the LIHEAP funding that CSD will be administering. And as you learned yesterday, the federal funding through HHS that's gone for rental and utility assistance that Housing and Community Development is in charge of at the state level is already rolling out. And so I just want to be, it seems like one of your recommendations was not attainable in terms of seeking a set aside from the department, since that money has already been, is already being distributed. And so I wonder if there were any other ideas that came to mind in terms of that funding in particular, and any other. So that's one question. And the other question on the LIHEAP funding, if there was any discussion on any sort of specifics on how to optimize the funding with LIHEAP, with CSD.
Thanks for the questions. In regard to your first question regarding the HCD funds, yes, that was a clear point of discussion that these funds are already being distributed to customers. I think the point we were trying to make more was in trying to find a way to let customers be aware through the utilities that these funds can be used for arrearage relief. As I believe reading through the intent of said funds, that's more of a secondary purpose to the intended rent relief, if I'm correct. And then regarding the LIHEAP funds, in terms of having a more specific discussion or determining what should be done with those funds regarding arrearages, we discussed how there's already a LIHEAP program in California, of course, and those funds are applied to customers so they can save on their bills. But the IOUs in our work team, specifically SCE, noted that there is extra room to provide more LIHEAP funds to customers, I believe. I believe that's what our representative in SCE was saying, and that it's possible in a similar manner to these HCD funds to make customers aware of additional LIHEAP funds that they could apply for that can cover past arrearages.
Okay, thank you. And I would just say that not just as we move forward here, that I think there's a greater opportunity now with the MOU and partnership that we have with CSD than just the marketing and awareness. So I would maybe just put that out for all the participants as we move forward in our thinking here, is that we might be able to be more intentional than we have in the past, which is a general kind of awareness to customers, but a targeting and prioritization. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'm going to move to our panel of discussants. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Ben, this is Charlie. I don't want to cut Kim. Did you want to go?
I can, either way, Charlie, I'm fine. I just put my headset on this time so people can hear me better. Go ahead, I can follow you.
So I have a bunch of thoughts on this, and I hope if people don't mind if I talk about Massachusetts, where I know the lie of the land better. I think I know the lie of the land enough in California. In no particular order, one thing we've done in Massachusetts, and NCLC kicked this off, is to have a kind of ad hoc messaging group, which has all of our regulated utilities, the Attorney General, the Fuel Assistance Network, thinking how do we change all the messages and the message channels that utilities have available to them to let people know about what's available. And so I do think in this environment, both because of what COVID has done to people, but also that there's a lot of new money around, it is worth having all of the stakeholders talk to each other about messaging. On this HCD issue, Commissioner, I'm glad you informed us that the money's somewhat out the door, but Massachusetts actually aligns with California on this. We have LIHEAP agencies, but the housing money is moving through a different agency. There is still an ability to help that non-energy agency, which is moving the housing/utility funds, to understand what the need is, to learn how to interact with utilities, how to make payments quickly, and to educate clients about what's available. Another big issue is across the country right now, LIHEAP agencies are struggling with getting people in the door because, in fact, the doors don't exist anymore. It's all virtual. And again, we've had kind of stakeholder discussions about what are those barriers and how do utilities and fuel agencies work with each other to change rules to make it easier to apply, because just ballpark, I've heard California is going to get, say, $250 million. Well, that's more than you get in your regular annual grant. And I think the commissioner was getting at this, or maybe Ryan was getting at it. Yeah, we need to think about how to move more money to electric bills because those arrearages have exploded, and now there's a lot of money on the table. And just two more quick thoughts, if you don't mind. I do think CBOs can be incredibly helpful in getting the word out. They know their communities. I would encourage utilities to think about what kinds of support you can provide to those CBOs. You already spend a lot of money on advertising, emails, and all the things you do. Well, here's another channel that maybe needs more support. And last, I don't know if CSD is on this, but collectively, all of you should think about, should California do the normal 25% set aside for weatherization work when there's a very urgent arrearage need right now? And I don't even know if California could ramp up its weatherization network to absorb another 25% out of this huge money you're going to get. It may be a year where you say, you know, this particular windfall money, maybe almost all of it goes to fuel assistance payments. And folks, thank you for listening. I know that was a lot, but thank you for listening.
Some of my thoughts are similar to what Charlie just mentioned. Let me start with partnering with the CBOs. I think they're critical. That's one of the first things that we did, is anybody that had any kind of connection with any of our outreach or any of our community-based organizations, whether they're nonprofits, whoever is touching our communities, we immediately got messaging out and word out to them about, you know, the HEAP, the additional funding with HEAP, and also with the rental assistance information. So they're absolutely critical to your success here, and making sure that they can help you spread that word and get customers to apply. So what Charlie said about LIHEAP, I literally just met with my LIHEAP partner this week, and although they've finished out their CARE Acts funding, they still haven't even committed all of their 2020 work. Now, this is in our smaller area. They don't just help Sacramento County, they do West Sacramento and some other, Yolo County and some other areas. But we talked about ways that we can better do that, better help them to get the word out and the messaging that we're using. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday. One of the things that we did early on is did a data share, and I think I saw some of that in the presentation, a data share with them on the customers that we had that we know qualify because they're already on our low income program, qualify, give them to make some direct outreach, which was super helpful for them. The other thing, the question came up about who should be targeted. One of the things that we did is we direct mailed and emailed any of our residential customers that were not already on our low income program, that were 90 days or more past due. And again, had that messaging in there. And not only did we have it with the LIHEAP message this time, remember our emergency rental assistance, the HCD funds, is already in place and started a while back. We also included that information to call them. What I can tell you about what I know from how we're doing it in Sacramento County, they're absolutely paying utility bills. We're supposed to get our first payment next week. We'll see how much of it will come in as utility, but for an efficiency standpoint, our county and city decided they were going to pay them both at the same time. So although rental has always been the priority here, they don't want to have to do rental and then go back and do utilities. So I don't know that every county will be doing it that way, but I would connect or figure out who in your area is doing those funds and connect with them any way that you can. I know PG&E's connected with the SARA program, same as SMUD in our area, but I'm sure I just don't know how other counties and cities are doing it, but the opportunity's there. Thanks for letting me add my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Kim. And Amy informs me that we do not have any questions from participants at this time, which is good because we are running a little bit behind. So while Justin gets up the matrix for Team 8, I am just going to briefly mention that while all of these thoughts have been really excellent from all of our discussants and participants, I am going to try and kind of move us along a little quicker and maybe ask our discussants to limit themselves to 1 thought per group. Also noting that we have a couple of times where 2 groups will be presenting on the same subject. So feel free to hold questions for the second group as well. With that, I'm going to turn to Team 8. Which is also in the leveraging and matching existing activities section. And if the presenter for Team 8 could also just say your affiliation as well when you start. Which looks like it is Jason Zeller for Team 8. Jason, are you on the line?
Jason should be on the line.
I do see Jason here. Jason, are you muted? I see.
I can unmute. I can unmute him. Let's see. Hey, Jason. Are you there?
Is there anyone else from Team 8 who is prepared to present?
If anybody needs to present and I haven't, the panelist, please reach out to me over chat directly and I can just make you a panelist right now, so it shouldn't be. Seems like Jason might be having technical difficulties.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I'm from Work Group 8. I can present.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Sure. So again, this is Jennifer Ward. I'm with SoCal Gas. I'm from the low income team. So our proposal area was leveraging and matching existing activities, and our top 3 proposals, first one was to lower the arrearage amount for AMP enrollment, adjust it from $300 for electric and to $250 for gas. Simplicity of that is high It'd be simple for customers to understand, and the feedback overall in the AMP program has been positive. Feasibility of implementation or ease of implementation for utilities also high, since it is a program that is already in place. We would just need to make tweaks to our internal procedures in order to be able to reduce the arrearage amount for enrollment. Equity is also high because it expands the number of customers that can be enrolled in the program. Leveraging existing programs and funding would also be high because, again, it's leveraging an existing program that's already in place. And I'm sorry, I can't see there we go. Okay. Mitigate cost shifting to non-participating customers. That would be medium because we're not quite sure what that cost would look like by increasing by lowering, the arrearage amount for AMP enrollment. We're not quite sure how that would impact non-participating customers. So we had indicated that as a medium. And then relief efforts for customers who don't qualify for low-income programs was low because AMP does not allow for customers who are not considered low-income to enroll in the program. So you have a segment of the population who we call, in our group, we call them the working poor, who are not poor enough to qualify for low-income assistance programs, so they can't qualify for AMP. The next proposal is a flexible 24-month payment plan. So this would be offering up to 24 months for a payment plan as opposed to the standard 12. The simplicity of this would be high since we already offer payment plans to customers and customers are already familiar with how they work. So as long as the payment plan is reasonable, we'll work with them. And we obviously give them the flexibility to have a payment plan that's less than right now the 12-month. If they want 6 months, they can have that, but the standard is to offer them 12. Feasibility of implementation or ease of implementation is high because, again, we're already offering a 12-month plan, so implementing it to 24 months would be quick and relatively easy. Equity, this is very high because it targets where the need is most, and it's flexible because all customers can participate in a payment plan. It's not income restricted. Leveraging existing programs and funding would also be high because, again, we're leveraging a program that is already in existence. So we would just leverage what we're already doing for 12 months and just change whatever messaging needs to be changed in order for it to reflect 24 months. Mitigating cost shifting to non-participating customers. We also indicated that as high for the same reasons. Program is already in place. And then relief for customers who don't qualify is, again, high because, again, you don't need to be income qualified to participate in a payment plan. And then our last proposal was to maximize the availability of LIHEAP so that in order to make AMP more effective. So again, AMP takes care of arrearages. If a customer enrolls in AMP and receives a LIHEAP grant, the AMP will take care of the arrearages. The LIHEAP will contribute to future bills. So if they're able to get a larger LIHEAP grant, then it could potentially reduce their arrearages in the long run. The simplicity of this, we actually indicated this as low. We had the benefit of having somebody in our group who has firsthand experience with applying for LIHEAP. She had shared her experience of helping her, I believe it was her grandparents, apply for LIHEAP every year. And it is a very, very labor-intensive process. It's complicated, requires quite a bit of paperwork on behalf of the customer, and they get confused and overwhelmed. And so as a result of that, because the application process is extensive and labor-intensive and can be confusing, it could disincentivize customers from applying for LIHEAP. Feasibility of implementation would also be medium. There's just a lot of unknown there on what it would look like to tap into that additional LIHEAP funding or the increased LIHEAP funding. So there's some unknowns there, which is why we had indicated that medium. Same thing for equity. There we indicated medium because the requiring the immigration status, at least in the state of California, could potentially leave out a subsection of people who do need the assistance but can't get it because of their immigration status. Leveraging existing programs is high because we already market LIHEAP to a degree, and LIHEAP is already in play as well as AMP. So we would just need to ramp up outreach in those areas, potentially working with CSD and LSPs to really get the word out there about the program. Mitigating cost shifting to non-participating customers, also high. Again, it's a program that's already in place. And then the relief efforts for customers who don't qualify for low-income programs is low because, again, both LIHEAP and AMP are income-based programs. So again, going back to the working poor, they would be left out. They wouldn't be able to take advantage of either of these programs. That is it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Sure.
Next, I'm going to move to the commissioners.
No questions. That's all very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And then now I'll move to discussants, which I think will be, well, yeah, discussants if you have any questions.
Just a quick comment on the third proposal. I can't underscore enough the importance of engaging CSD, which was in that proposal. For example, there's nothing in federal law that prohibits the state from paying towards arrearages in LIHEAP. You can go back to October 1st. And there are discussions around the country how to change the rules so we can get more money on people's electric utility bills. So I just want to underscore that is a very important proposal.
Thank you, Charles.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And Amy, do we have any questions from the chat or from Q&A?
We don't have any questions in the Q&A. Just a reminder to everyone participating to use the Q&A feature if you'd like to ask any questions of any of the presenters.
Okay, great. So with that, I will say thank you to Team 8, and we'll move on to the next team, which is Work Team 3 in Proposal Area C, which is ongoing non-financial assistance. Justin, do you have Team 3's grid? It looks like. Okay. And Team 8, is your presenter ready?
Hello, this is David. I'll be the presenter today. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So just to level set, what we're presenting today is not meant to be exclusive. And what that means is that several of the participants in our team had proposals in other areas, proposal areas. So this is not meant to be exclusive. So in terms of proposals that are for ongoing non-financial assistance, the team had we realized going through that we had a lot of similarities in our proposals. So we opted to try to formulate a consensus proposal. And we were successful in agreeing upon many of the features, which are listed here as consensus features, which I can go over real quick. We all agreed that, and actually, Justin, if you can scroll up a little bit. Yeah. So we all agreed that the payment plans should be available to all existing customers, regardless of age of account. We also agreed that customers should opt into the program, through any channel they want, and instead of being auto enrolled in these longer-term payment plans. We also agreed that these longer-term payment plan offers should be available for 12 months, starting with the end of the moratorium. So if that happens to be June, then it'll be available for 12 months after that. The part we couldn't quite reach consensus was the exact sort of duration or the term of the payment plan. And so we have here 3 options. The first option is utilities must offer customers a choice of a 24-month payment plan, or the utilities offer choices between a 12, 18, or 24-month payment plan. And option 3 is to offer 2 times the number of months of arrears, with 12 months being minimum and 24 months being maximum. I think we heard a little bit about this earlier. Now, I think the important thing to keep in mind is that we believe all of these options will have the effect of sort of, and this is kind of reflected in the outline, they all have the effect of sort of assisting customers in the short run, and assuming that the participation is good, it will also achieve the efficacy, which is to reduce arrearages overall. How it differs, and in terms of the trade-off and balances, it really comes down to the simplicity of participation and how easy to implement. So we think options 1 and 2 are easy to understand and easy to implement in terms of the IOU systems. However, option 3, even though it's harder to understand and harder to implement, and I think as Charlie noted earlier, customers themselves would not know what they're eligible for unless they reached out to the utility, because many of them don't know how many months in arrears they are. But what option 3 has in terms of advantages is that, you know, given the utilities data that shows longer term payment plans generally has lower payoff percentages, the cost shift to non-participating customers is probably going to be lower for option 3 compared to the other options. And so that's really the criteria chart does not do a good job of showing that trade-off. So I wanted to make sure that I highlight that. Last thing is, you know, we also had Southwest Gas in our team, and they're not currently under the rule of the minimum 12-month payment plan, and so they are proposing that the minimum should be an 8-month payment plan, which is the rule they're currently operating under. I think that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, David. First, I'm going to move to commissioners for any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'll move to our discussants. Discussants, any questions? Hearing none. I will turn to Amy to see if we've received any questions in the Q&A.
Nothing in the Q&A. Judge Watsaga, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you. Yes, this is ALJ Watsaga, and I just wanted to ask the team about, and particularly Edison, because they shared a lot of data prior to the workshop on their current number and length of payment plans, and it appeared that in the last year, most payment plans are under 6 months. And so when you consider expanding payment plans to 12, 18, or 24 months, is that a recommendation due to the crisis, or do you expect customer behavior to be different due to the disconnection moratorium, or what are the reasons for extending those terms now? And I'd be interested in hearing from the thoughts of any utility on the extensions compared to what they've been doing in the last year or two.
So Justin, if you want to make Jake Hutner a panelist.
I'll do that.
Good morning. This is Eric with SoCal Edison. Maybe I can speak to that because I provided that data. So I think in the data we're having a little bit of a misinterpretation here. What that, I think the 82% that you're referring to in the sheet is not how long the length of the payment plans are. It's the length of months that our customer is behind. So it's 80. I think it's like 82% of the customers right now, when we looked at it, are 1 to 6 months behind. Not that we've offered them 1 to 6 month in payment plans.
Thank you for that clarification. And so do you expect the customer payment trends to be similar when they have 18 or 24-month payment plans to what they are to the shorter payment plans, or do you expect differences in the customer payment behavior?
So I will say, I think in the past, Edison, I don't know about the other IUs, but we've in a separate proceeding, we have put out comments that specifically said based on data, but obviously the data is a little bit outdated at this point, that the longer payment plans did not have a very high success rate. However, this is also a kind of a whole new world in terms of the customers being greater in arrears and potentially even different customers that are impacted depending on what a financial impact of COVID is. And so really the way that we were looking at it was we don't know. We don't have enough data about it. We were trying to come at it from a standpoint of how far behind are the customers right now, and then trying to extrapolate what do we think is a fair term to get them back, with the thought being that while the payment plans can go out as long as, you know, whatever the number is that's ultimately decided, there is a carrying cost that will be attributed to all customers as a result of doing so. And so that's the kind of the way that we're looking at it is how can we be equitable to all customers, helping those that need maybe longer payment plans, and then as well as like what would that potentially look like in terms of how does that impact other customers?
Great. Thank you for that response. And I'm understanding that we might have one question from Q&A. Justin, are you able to read that at this time?
Yes, it's from Melissa Kaznitz. She actually had a question for the leveraging panel on how a proposal to extend AMP terms would leverage any outside funding. It seemed that this would only work if shareholders are planning to contribute.
And Justin, you said that was for the previous team?
That was for the previous team, yes.
Okay. I'm not going to call back the previous team at this time, but I appreciate that question. Maybe we can get it answered in the chat if anyone from that team is still on. But I'm going to turn to our next team at this time, which is Work Team 2. Thank you so much, Work Team 3, for your participation. Work Team 2 is in Proposal Area B, which is ongoing financial assistance. And we do have a second work team presenting in this area afterwards. That's Work Team 7. So Work Team 2, take it away whenever you're ready.
I can start, and I do think Eric Lee or other members can speak to this chart. Some of the proposals here are similar to things we've heard before, so I wanted to focus on where our chart is very different. And if you can scroll to the last proposal, what we were doing was trying to target relief to the most vulnerable population, and realizing that AMP is an opt-in program, and that arrearage management programs are not ideal for households that do not have a steady stream of income. So we are going to have this segment of, even within the low-income population, that won't really be able to avail themselves of the AMP, that will be struggling with COVID arrears. So we started with trying to figure out a COVID credit. So this is our COVID-19 Care FIRA credit proposal. It is not designed to address all of the segments of even residential. So I just wanted to be clear. Right now, the placeholder it's a credit of up to $800. And the intent here is to find whatever that arrearage amount is that would capture 80 to 90% of the Care FIRA population. And then, you know, those with larger arrears, I will talk about them next. But for this Care FIRA credit would just apply to the arrearages. Customers would need to apply for it. It should immediately help a large section of the low-income customer base, those with arrearages larger than that amount, that up to $800 with a star, would need to look at the AMP plus LIHEAP, because the disconnection decision creating the AMP program directs LIHEAP payments towards the current bill. So if a customer with a larger arrearage, 800 subtracted away, but still has an arrearage, can get a LIHEAP grant, those LIHEAP dollars can help ensure success, even though they may not have normally a steady stream of income. And for those households without Social Security numbers, there still needs to be identified a more flexible pot of funding, perhaps fuel funds or such that can also help them be successful moving forward. So that was the sort of different from what we've heard thus far programs. I don't know if Eric wants to try and cover some of these other ones that are up at the top, but where do you want to
Eric,
go?
if you have anything you want to add, go ahead. Otherwise, I will move on to questions.
Yeah, in the interest of time, let's move on, and then we're happy to answer any questions on any of these.
Great. I love in the interest of time. Okay, I will move to commissioners for any questions.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge the distinction that's being made on the crisis response. Excuse me. I did also want to mention that I know many of you are aware that in the disconnections proceeding, we are very close to putting out a PD on the payment income payment plan, percentage of income payment plan, which is to deal with those more chronic and affordable cases, that pilot program. And also I did want to mention, well, maybe my only question is did you derive the 800 from something in particular?
It was a quick proxy. I mean, it was, no, that's why it has a star. I mean, some analysis needs to be done, but the formula would be to capture 80 to 90% of the CARE-FERA population arrearage amount, that highest arrearage amount that would provide relief to them, so that we can sort of narrow down the pool that we need to direct to AMP, help them succeed, leverage that LIHEAP. That was the goal.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'll turn to our discussants for any questions. And hearing none, I will turn to Amy to see if we have any questions we received in the Q&A.
We have one question from Leslie Brown asking where would the credit come from and how would it be paid or recovered?
We did not really grapple with the answer of a consensus decision on cost recovery, but there are other proposals in the record out there. For example, the Turn proposal for a 50-50 shareholder ratepayer coverage of that cost. But our work group did not come to a consensus answer for that. Just acknowledge that there would be a ratepayer impact.
Okay.
And yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and to be clear, it was not a consensus proposal. This is, in the interest of developing proposals, it was a proposal that we came up with.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Okay, and with that, I will say thank you to Work Team 2, and we'll move to Work Team 7, which is on the same proposal area. Work Team 7, yes, this is Work Team 7, perfect. So whenever you are ready, Work Team 7.
Morning, this is Connie Cho from the California Environmental Justice Alliance, and Work Team 7 also had representatives from PG&E, SC&E, SCE, Liberty Utilities, and the National Center for Accessible Technology, as well as SoCalGas. So in the context of 3 proposals, we discussed several aspects of policy design that reflected the values of fairness, equity, ease of participation, and although not explicitly named on the grid, the ease of implementation from the utility end. These proposals were, as you see here, AP briefly, and for the most part, we discussed a proposal to expand AMP to include those who have been economically impacted by COVID beyond care and fair recipients. This was largely based on the proposal submitted by NCLC and the Center for Accessible Technologies, also noting that LIHEAP excludes undocumented. Briefly, SCE shared their proposal, which modifies AMP but does not expand eligibility beyond care and fair app. So rather than ranking the values, we spent the vast majority of our time exploring what some of these values would translate into in terms of program design, and we hope that's still helpful for the Commission and all parties. We tried to improve our shared understanding about the following. First, that online only enrollment has been quick to launch, yet as we have sadly seen in the COVID vaccine rollout, we may miss enrolling a huge swath of vulnerable people through that means. That the widest eligibility penetration, meaning enrolling the largest number of people who are eligible, comes from auto enrollment, and at the same time there are concerns about whether a customer fully understands payment plan conditions, which is sort of the result of a significant technical design challenge for utilities. When enrolled, arrears actually disappear off of customers' billed when they're enrolled in a plan. And so without a full understanding, they may miss payments and become frozen out of the program as it's currently designed. Next, that messaging about 2 different programs called AAP and AMP would be a challenge, and that on the back end, operationally, that shift between the 2 would also be a challenge. But to improve enrollment and outreach, if utilities do engage trusted community partners who are able to provide linguistic access, both in terms of non-English languages and accessibility, they must be financially supported to do so. And next, that the additional programmatic buffers may be needed. More and more customers are having to triage their bills for basic survival needs in this economy. So to retain people, this is what we call program retention, to retain people on these forgiveness payment plans and not be kicked off. We see seasonal bill volatility as a predictable threat to account for, and we need to remember, although this is being started to be addressed in the disconnections proceeding with the PIP, the fact that Care and Fair is a percentage-based discount program, meaning that combined with rising energy costs, there's no actual affordability guarantee. So some buffers might come in the form of rethinking or increasing the number of missed payments allowed and not freezing out customers for a year if they do miss a payment. We noted that we really need more data to understand the level and nature of the economic need between different customer classes, where the debt is concentrating and to what extent, especially among households who are now lower income as a result of the pandemic economy, and low income and disadvantaged communities, of course. We did not broach the issue of funding, and we did not, beyond the point of saying that it was contingent on available sources and, of course, after considering one-time assistance.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Next, I will move to our commissioners for any questions.
Well, thank you, Connie, and I appreciate the focus on the non-care fare customers. It is a large part of the concerned customers. It was prior to COVID as well. And it was one of the debates that we had, and ultimately where we landed with the AMP in its original inception and approval was to limit it to care and FARA. But I think the, this is a very worthy question from my perspective. And I wonder if there are any further thoughts around any sort of parameters if we do allow the general population to participate. And maybe as an example, did you guys consider a different, max ceiling on what could be included in the plan or any other parameters if we allow the general population to participate?
We certainly didn't settle on a number or a figure or an exact benchmark, but we did discuss area percentages of area medium income as opposed to the federal poverty guidelines, and also considered geographic distributions in DACs, but also really noting that even outside of the disadvantaged communities, which have cumulative burdens, we know that there's a wide spread of economic need there. And also, although it was not discussed much, thinking about the changed economic circumstances because of the pandemic and debt that now exists and must be paid in this economy that existed prior to COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'll move to discussants for any questions. Okay, and hearing no questions, I'll move to Amy to see if we have any questions from the Q&A.
I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. And just one logistical reminder, for those of you that are panelists, if you'd like to ask a question, the Q&A feature is disabled for you, so you can enter those into the chat and I will monitor both.
Thank you for that clarification, Amy. Yes. Well, with that, I will say thank you to Team 7, and we'll move on to our next team, which is Work Team 1 in Proposal Area A, one-time financial assistance. This is our last proposal area. We have 2 teams presenting in this proposal area, and we have about 15 minutes left until our 11:30 scheduled end time. So we are almost on track. So with that, Team 1, whenever you are ready, go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. This is Jamie Katz with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I'm presenting for Group 1. We had representatives from San Diego Gas and Electric, PG&E, the Cal Advocates, Proteus Inc., CWA, and the Energy Efficiency Council. So we developed 9 criteria in order to evaluate the 3 proposals that we are bringing forward today. Those are positive customer experience, customer need, feasibility, fairness, customer flexibility and choice, efficacy, adequacy, equity, and whether the proposal is targeted or not. So the first proposal that we have is a financial assistance program that for all customers at or below 250% of the federal poverty level, 100% of their arrears would be forgiven. And this could be stacked with other programs, but does not require enrollment in CARE, FARA, or AMP. We determined that this proposal prioritizes equity, it's targeted, and it's focused on customer need, particularly for those who meet the income threshold. Of course, the trade-off is that it would exclude customers above this income threshold. And in terms of benefits and risks, we raised that it had the risk of potentially raising rates. Our second proposal is a one-time assistance of $200 to customers who don't qualify for the low income assistance programs. They would have to demonstrate some sort of financial impact due to COVID. We raised the possibility of using a similar mechanism to what has been used in the rental housing context, where a customer would provide a declaration of their COVID-related impact, as opposed to having to provide some other demonstration of that impact. This program would also require that these customers would make 2 payments before the forgiveness would be granted. This is the only one of our 3 proposals that included a behavioral incentive. We decided that this proposal prioritized need and fairness. Of course, the trade-off is that it does not prioritize equity. It has the benefit of costing less as a program, but has the risk, again, of leaving behind those who are at most vulnerable, and the requirement of having 2 payments means that those who might otherwise qualify, whose economic recovery over the course of the year is slower and don't make those payments. And so the final proposal that we have would be to forgive 3/4 of all customer arrears, regardless of income and regardless of a demonstrated COVID impact. And recovery of this could be over multiple years and through outside funding when possible. We agree that this proposal prioritizes customer experience, efficacy, customer need, and fairness. The trade-off is that it does not eliminate all debt, nor is it targeted to those at greatest risk and in greatest need. The benefit is that it's relatively easy in terms of a customer experience and the cost recovery benefit for non-participants. The risk, of course, that is leaving all customers with 25% of their arrears still poses a risk of disconnection going forward. So those are our proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, I will move to commissioners for any questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'll move to discussants for any questions.
Yeah, this is Charlie, and I have a question raised by this one and several of the teams. Some of these proposals are expensive and will have a ratepayer impact. And I'm wondering if this team, because it really came up in their proposals, or others want to jump in, have considered shareholder contribution, which I will admit cannot be required. On the other hand, this virus has killed 550,000 Americans and decimated people across the board economically. And I don't know how to get at it, but at some point, I hope the utilities are forthcoming with what they're willing to do. So I guess my question is, will they come forward with any proposal on shareholder contribution, which has occurred in other states?
Well, I do not work for utility, so I can't answer that precise question. I will say that we did not discuss that explicitly. We, in our third proposal, discussed one possible funding mechanism, but did not discuss that. But of course, open to my colleagues from the utilities on my team to respond to that.
Any utility representatives from Team 1 prepared to answer the question?
Hi, this is Megan Dewey from PG&E. No, we're not prepared to answer that question today. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, I will move to other questions. Amy, do you have any questions in the chat? Okay. Hearing none for now, Judge Watzaga, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to follow up on Charlie Herrick's question. And it may be utilities or the Public Advocate's Office who could perhaps take a stab at this, is that regardless of the quote cost of any of these proposals, based on the COVID payment protection memorandum accounts and some of the residential uncollectible balancing accounts in place now, is the default for any program right now is there a default funding mechanism from your perspective? And I know the Public Advocate's Office put out a scenario of recovery over 1 year, and I wonder if they believe that any programs would automatically, there is a default funding in place right now. That is my question.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
I think working with the Public Advocate's Office
And are mechanisms in place to recover any amount of bills that customers are unable to pay, such as uncollectibles. However, and I was not involved in the first disconnections OIR, but from my recollection of reading the decisions, that some of those under collections from that resulted from the disconnections OIR were recovered in a separate mechanism from the uncollectibles account. And it's very possible that some of the revenue under collections resulting from this pandemic and this unprecedented time may be recovered through uncollectibles over a shorter period, typically 1 year, or through an alternative decided funding mechanism, which I would assume would potentially be over a short period as well, just because uncollectibles are funded that way. However, our position, and as you mentioned, our data shows that as long as these revenue under collections are spread over multiple years, depending on the number of years, it's very possible that customers won't be noticing those impacts.
Okay, thank you for that. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to our next team, but noting that we have a few additional questions that we've received in the Q&A of a more general nature. So we will continue going through some of those questions after the next group's presentation, just to make sure that, since we had some tech issues at the very beginning. But for now, I'm going to move on to our last presenting team, which is Work Team 6. I'll note also that I've received word that there are 2 presenters for this group because of some internal disagreements about the proposals. So I will move on to this team now, whenever you are ready. Work Team 6.
Thanks, Ben. This is Siobhan from SDG&E. Sorry, who is the other presenter? I wasn't aware.
I heard from Gabriela Sandoval and Shauna Lazaro that they were interested in just adding a little bit, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. So I'll go ahead and get started then. And so we had representatives from California Water Association, California Environmental Justice Alliance, TURN, Southwest Gas, Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. So the 4 proposals are going in the following order. So it's San Diego Gas and Electric's, TURN's, CEJA's, and SoCal Edison's. So SDG&E has presented a modified arrearage assistance program proposal, or as proposed by the commission. So a customer with $1,000 in arrears would make 2 consecutive on-time payments before receiving the $200 bill credit with no additional debt forgiveness. And then we would enroll a customer in a 12-month payment plan to pay off the rest of the arrearages. We also propose that this be limited for 6 months following the expiration of the emergency customer protections. The on-time payment portion of this proposal aligns with AMP. You can see from the chart, it's generally neutral across the board. However, AMP is in place for residential care and fair customers, as mentioned previously. And the commission's proposal for AAP was designed to target residential and potentially small business customers. So stakeholders in our group were also concerned at targeting other vulnerable groups. So it's low, medium in that category. And then just generally, Southwest Gas and Edison are opposed to an AAP. Southwest Gas has a lower bill population, and then SoCal Edison has a separate proposal, which I will discuss below. So I'm not sure if I should pause or just keep going and have Gabriela and Shauna chime in after.
No, go ahead, Siobhan.
Okay, and then a second proposal is TURN's to forgive the debt for care and fair customers enrolled during March 2020 to June 2021, or the COVID protections This would be 50% ratepayer funded, 50% voluntary shareholder contribution, while also leveraging federal funds to reduce those contributions. This was also generally neutral across the board. We didn't really come to a consensus as to whether this would incentivize customer payment. Some stakeholders agreed, some disagreed. And then additionally, forgiving all of the debt would certainly impact rates from a cost recovery perspective. Next is CEJA's proposal. So their proposal wasn't made through formal comments on the OIR. So verbally, I believe it was that the total COVID-19 bill debt forgiveness for all residential customers in disadvantaged communities, or DACs, would be forgiven, and they would have the opportunity to self-certify for income eligibility, which would align with AMI. And the stakeholders we mentioned in our group would need to sort of better understand the number of customers in DACs in our service territories to understand the customer impacts or rate impacts and cost recovery for this proposal. And then lastly is SoCal Edison's, which has been mentioned previously. So lowering the AMP threshold from $500 to $300 to allow more customers to enroll in AMP. Their thought is this would be more beneficial than the Commission's AAP proposal, which is proposing 50% debt forgiveness for the lower income customers. This would also be limited to the COVID-19 debt arrears. They would also leverage the additional LIHEAP funds that are coming to California. You can see it's generally high across the board. We would certainly need to better understand the regulatory effects of a proposal, potentially a petition for modification of the disconnection OIR. And then the rate impacts related to cost recovery. And then lastly, initially we put this as high for feasibility and implementation. However, after discussing with my team internally last night, I mentioned this in the group, SDG&E is in the middle of the customer information system transition. We go live on April 5th. So the current $500 threshold for AMP has already been built into our system. And we would be unable to make this system change. So it would not be possible for SDG&E. So those two categories would unfortunately be low, specific to SDG&E only. I think that's all I have.
So I just want to add that there were significant differences between advocates and the IOUs in our discussion. And I'm afraid that the ratings and the criteria don't reflect that. And so I just want to make sure that that the record reflects that we were not able to come to consensus on either what the kind of defining features of the criteria were, or on the ratings that are reflected in the table.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Gabriella. That is helpful. I will move to commissioners for any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the creative ideas. Just a reflection, I think one that Charlie already made earlier, which is obviously many of these proposals are only going to be fully palatable with some shareholder contribution. So I really do hope those conversations can occur, but no real questions. Thank you.
And to that point, I don't think we necessarily discussed that in our group. SDG&E tried to address that in our comments on the OIR, specifically what we are doing that includes shareholder contributions related to COVID-19 funds that we also spearheaded in our specific service territory.
Great, thank you for that reflection, Commissioner. Next, I'll move to any questions from the discussants. And hearing none, I'll turn to Amy for any questions on this team's proposals from the Q&A, and then we'll move to the more general questions.
I don't see any questions.
Okay. Well, then I will ask you to ask any of the general questions that you identified.
Sorry, just going back through. So one question that came in related to an earlier panel was on the proposal to extend AMP, and this question came from Melissa Kasnitz, and we didn't have time to answer it earlier, but her question was, for the leveraging panel, if you extend AMP terms, how would you leverage outside funding? It seems this would only work if shareholders are planning to contribute.
I believe that goes to team 4 or team 8, right?
Yeah, it was either team 4 or team 8. If anyone from those teams feels prepared to answer, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question.
This is Eric with SoCal Edison. I think I can speak on behalf of Team 4 a little bit. So there was a lot of confusion, we think, around what it really means. But we also do recognize that in terms of like LIHEAP funding and AMP, there are specific rules already established that would make, I guess, it more efficient for the customer or best bang for your buck, so to speak, where the customer should enroll in AMP first and then receive LIHEAP funding, which would then only be applied to the customer's current and future monthly bills. So in that case, it would be a collaboration, if you will, between AMP forgiveness as well as the LIHEAP funding coming in and then only impacting the customer's current bills, and that would be the best case for the customer. So in examples like that, we thought that there was a pretty easy path forward of like getting some education and speaking with the LIHEAP service providers to make sure that they understand and they're aware as they help the customers. Where we got a little bit more caught up with how outside funding would work is that there's kind of a conflict on both sides. The understanding would be is that the governmental agencies, whoever is administering some of these funds, would want to check with the IOUs or the utilities in general of, does the customer have this amount of arrears, and then they would want to pay or directly kind of distribute funds that way. And so the customer would have to show, or the IOU would have to reflect that there are outstanding arrears. So if the IOUs were to, in kind of in that example of forgiving something, then the customer would no longer have any arrears to show, and then we would not be able to then kind of demonstrate to the agency. So outside funding in that case may be kind of disincentivized or stopped. And then so where we got stuck was, is there any way of in the middle or not, and we didn't come up with a solution. So it really was just maybe in a specific instance with LIHEAP and AMP that would work.
Great, thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Amy.
And I see two questions related to utility payment plans. The first question comes from Jason Zeller. Has Edison or any other utility tried to find out why longer payment plans have a low success rate?
So this is Eric again for Edison, and I tried to respond in the chat to Jason, but in other proceedings, Edison has previously advocated for root cause analysis or additional evaluation to better kind of understand, but unfortunately we haven't been able to gain any traction for that effort. So the quick answer would be no, we don't really know.
Okay, and then a similar question from Richard Esteves is, what percentage of low-income families placed on an extended payment plan successfully pay off their arrearages as part of the payment program?
This is Siobhan from SDG&E. I don't know that I necessarily have percentage of families placed in a payment plan that successfully pay off their arrearages. However, we did provide supplemental data to Ben, which was subsequently posted to the website, which shows 2019 and 2020 payment arrangements and the success rates by length of payment arrangement. So it's broken out by 1 to 3 months, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 9 to 12, and greater than 12. So we can see from the varying percentages there. Ben, I'm not sure if we can direct them to the website or share your screen. That's at least SDG&E's take.
I will definitely encourage all participants and attendees to check out the website, which should be in the meeting materials and has all of that supplemental data provided by a number of parties posted, including SDG&E's. I don't have it up right now, so I won't share my screen, but it was very helpful. Amy, are there any other questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, just a clarifying question from Kim Riccolo is, what does AAP stand for in the final presentation?
I'm unable to chat. I was trying to respond. It's the Arrearage Assistance Program, which is stemming from the Commission's OIR and the Proposal A specifically.
Amy, are there any other questions in the Q&A?
I don't see anything else.
Okay. Well, in that case, I will thank all of our work teams and discussants for their invaluable assistance and hard work over the last couple of days. We have one more session remaining in this workshop this afternoon, which is the status conference. This session will begin at 1:30 p.m. And all apologies. And all participants in the status conference should make sure to confirm their speaker's name with Judge Watzaga. If you have not done that already, directly email her with the name of your speaker for session 5, the status conference. Unless any of my fellow organizers have any other concluding thoughts, I believe we will break for lunch.
Thank you, Ben.
Shop in this rulemaking, and I want to check with our first hearing reporter. Carol, that's you, and you can hear me, correct? Great. Okay. We will be on the record. This is ALJ Watzaga. Thank you for joining us for the concluding session of workshop in this rulemaking to address arrearages of customers on their energy bills. And as I've mentioned before, this session will be a roundtable where we will go through a list of party representatives who are displayed here in this order, and each party representative will have an opportunity to share any conclusions they've drawn through their participation in this workshop. And we have about 17 speakers, so I think that'll give us about 2.5 minutes per speaker when we go through the first round. And then we will pause, and myself and commissioners, I think we have with us, I see Commissioner Rechtschaffen, and I do not know if Commissioner Guzman-Aceves is with us for session 5. Yes, I see Commissioner Guzman-Aceves as well. I don't, if any other commissioner is here, could somebody indicate that to me? So we'll go through the list of 17 speakers and we'll pause for questions, and then we will have another round through the same speaker order of about 2 minutes each. And I will try not to interject as we go through the speaker list so we can give everyone a good amount of time to share what they've learned, but we may interject to ask clarifying questions. And at this point, I will just check with a few parties who I did not hear back from and see if we can confirm that they are with us in the session. Let's see here. We did not have with us in the workshop earlier Alpine Natural Gas, West Coast Gas, or Pacificor. So I'll just pause here and see if any representatives from these 3 parties are on the line now. All right, I'm moving down our list of speakers, and I would like to ask the National Consumer Law Center to just let us know who will be the representative with us here for session 5. You may unmute and identify yourself.
Hi, it will be Olivia Wine.
Thank you. And then everyone else on the list is confirmed.